Hmm. Good evening, students. I hope you all are doing great. Well, welcome back to the daily live analysis of the newspaper of the Hindu and Indian Express. And today I'll be discussing with you the important current affairs of 29th July 2022. Students, mind you, the session on the general awareness is very, very important, and you cannot think of cracking the exam without the preparation of current affairs. It forms the bedrock of the preparation for CLAT examination, UPSC, or any other government exams. So it is very, very important. It is something which is unavoidable. And please take full advantage of these live sessions, and you'll get a better understanding of it because you are watching it and you are understanding the concepts. And so I'm your educator, Prithviraj Singh, and I'll be discussing with you the important current affairs. Well, on the very front page of the Hindu, there was an article about 44th Chess Olympiad to be held in Madras or Chennai. Now, this is a very important event because it is the first time that the Chess Olympiad. See, Chess Olympiad, as you have the Olympic Games, similarly, there is an Olympic Games for chess, also called as Chess Olympiad, and it is being held by FIDE. And FIDE in English stands for the International Chess Federation or World Chess Federation, which is headquartered at Switzerland. So it's an annual event, and every year it is being held. So this is the first time that Chess Olympiad will be conducted in India, and this is the 44th Chess Olympiad. Right. Now, and in fact, it is the first time in the last 30 years the tournament is organized in Asia. So, in this sense, it is a very big achievement. So, in the past 30 years, no such chess Olympiad has been organized in Asia. So, therefore, it is a big achievement for India. And definitely, as I said, it is the first time that India is hosting the chess Olympiad. Well, and in fact, there is one more important takeaway from this article that it is the first time the Olympiad had a torch relay. So, as there is a torch relay for Olympic Games, similarly, for the first time there was a torch relay for the Olympiad, and it went through 75 locations, traveling over around 27,000 kilometers. So, it went through various countries. Right? Now, Pakistan is objecting, and in fact, Pakistan has pulled out of this event. It is saying that the torch, the Olympiad torch or the torch relay, also crossed Jammu and Kashmir. It also passed through Jammu and Kashmir, which it believes to be a contested territory. I mean, all the Jammu and Kashmir is apart from the Aksai Chin and the POK is India, but then also it argues that it has a stake in this in the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir. So therefore, it has pulled out. Now, Prime Minister Modi inaugurated the session, the event, and he said that Tamil Nadu is the chess powerhouse of India because it has produced some of the brilliant chess, world-class chess players. So therefore, and he also said that Tamil is the oldest language in the world. Well, if I talk about the FIDE, which is the International Chess Federation or the World Chess Federation, the present president of FIDE is Arkady Zurkovich. I repeat, it is Arkady Zurkovich. So these are some important takeaways from this article. Well, moving to the next news article on the screen, a very important one, students, and this relates to Taiwan and how America want to uh, actually liberate it because China claims Taiwan as its own territory. And for more details, just click the below mentioned link on the live channel on the YouTube channel. You'll find a below mentioned link where I have telecasted a, a session over the Taiwan and how the historical background of the China-Taiwan relation and how why America want to give a status, independent status to Taiwan. So you can just get the background and the conceptual understanding of Taiwan issue. Just click onto that video and you'll get all the details. Well, recently, there are, as you know, that the legislature or the Parliament of America, which is called as Congress, has two houses. The lower house is called as House of Representatives, and the upper house is called as Senate. Now, the Speaker of House of Representatives or the lower house is Nancy Pelosi, and in the hierarchical order, she is third powerful person in United States after the president and the vice president. Third in the hierarchy, third most powerful person. Now, Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the lower house, House of Representatives, is would be very soon visiting Taiwan, and because of these speculations, China has warned America that if it happens, then it may, escalate into some military drills, and it would escalate. Possibly, it has threatened for a war. If it happens, it may close off the airspace, or a temporary naval blockade may also happen. So it has threatened that it would take military measures if the U.S. representative or the speaker Nancy Pelosi visits the disputed Taiwan. So, therefore, but America is very firm. It want to resolve the Taiwan crisis, and it has also said, China has also said that, China would do the same what Russia is doing in Ukraine. So, therefore, it has a possibility of escalation, and and we don't want it to escalate, spiral out of control because both are, mind you, nuclear states. Now, in this sense, this visit would be the most high-level engagement between America and Taiwan since 1997. All right, so you can watch this YouTube video, beautiful video, live telecasted by our team, and this me, U.S.-Taiwan relations, and the link is also there below mentioned. Moving to the next news article, a very important news surfaced on the media about the government bailing out BSNL or bailing out the loss-making BSNL Bharat Sanchar Nigam Limited. Now, recently, the government of India has decided to provide a 1.64 lakh crore rupees lifeline support to BSNL, and was badly needed because it was incurring huge losses. Uh, you know, uh, Now, the objective behind this bailout, by because they always had an option to close it up, right? To close up, to close it and to shut it down, right? But they opted to actually sustain it, to give it a lifeline because of their social objectives. Because BSNL is a strategic partner of India when it comes to its flagship program of reducing the digital divide or the optical fiber networks, the BharatNet providing the high-speed network to the Panchayati Raj institutions, so on and so forth. So it would provide the crucial, capital support to address the multiple financial, technology, and spectrum needs. Well, BSNL's share of wireline connections has also, fallen sharply to 28% at the end of 2022 May, because after the privatization of the telecom sector, BSNL has lost the race, and it has incurred huge losses even on the wired as well as the wireless front. Even the number of its rural wireless subscribers has shrank by just by, and that is something which is a sign of consolation, because as far as the rural India is concerned, its user base has not shrunk that much as compared to the urban base. Well, the BSNL's net loss has narrowed appreciably to around 7,453 crore rupees. So therefore, it was a badly needed, bailout, and the government gives it a lifeline to revive it. Let us understand the BSNL and its history. Well, guys, BSNL was once a Navratna company, but after the reforms in the private telecom sector, after privatizing it, it started incurring huge losses. It was not able to cope up to the competition by the private players like the Airtel, Vodafone, so on and so forth. It became sick and saddled with high losses, more than 90,000 crore rupees. At the same time, it had excess workforce or the government employees, and it was simply uncompetitive. And therefore, it prompted the government to consider its sell-off or even complete closure. If I talk about MTNL, which is Metropolitan your Mahanagar Telecom, Sanchar Nigam Limited, which is again a state-owned company, telecommunication service provided, but it operates only in Mumbai and New Delhi, and it has around 22,000 employees. Now, in this reform or in this decision by the cabinet, they have merged MTNL and BSNL so that there would be synergy of operations. Now, now there are five factors that saved BSNL from its closure, because otherwise there were huge there were talks that the government would close it sooner than later, but then there are five factors which actually saved it from the closure. The first was that it has the largest optical fiber network in the country. Right. So, and the government has a plan, something called as BharatNet, where it would be laying down the optical fiber net into the rural areas to connect the local government institutions like Panchayat Raj institution with high-speed network. Right. So, it is an ambitious program of the government, the BharatNet project, and the government has also allocated sufficient budget, sufficient funds in the 2022 union budget. Right. At the same time, BSNL students is also the first responder in case of natural calamities. So whenever there is a natural calamity like landslide or floods, etc., BSNL comes as a rescues the people because it gives the line of communication, and in this way it is the first responder as it is called to restore the communication links in the areas hit by natural disasters. The third and the most important thing is the large tower base, and the contribution in the BharatNet project. So it has around over 66,000 towers across the country. So in this way, at the same, it has a very huge network in that sense, and it also has a remote connectivity, especially to the border regions where the private players do not have much presence. So BSNL also has created a separate company called as BSNL Tower Corporation Limited, or BTCL, to monetize its huge investment in the tower infrastructure. Moving to the next slide, the package given by the government, as we have discussed, 1.6 lakh crore rupees, has broadly three components. The first is that the BSNL would be allocated spectrum in 900 to 1800 megahertz band. Right? So in this sense, it would be it would be given broader spectrum. Now, we must understand that spectrum is can be defined as invisible radio frequencies on which the wireless signals travel, and it facilitates the phone calls and the internet usage. So that means, in the layman terms, more the spectrum, more the better the connectivity, more high speed network or internet would be there. Right? So this is a very important move. Of the bailout package of 1.6 lakh crore, is very, very crucial because it would increase the spectrum, allocated spectrum of the BSNL, and it would in turn, provide the high-speed data to the people, and especially it would be a game changer in the rural areas. At the same time, the other factor, behind this bailout is the social objectives, because government want to reduce the digital gap, and the BSNL is the foremost player in the rural wireline operations. The third important aspect about this bailout is that the government would also be increasing the authorized capital, from 40,000 crore to 1.5 lakh crore in lieu of its adjusted gross revenue dues or AGR dues, right? So the 1.6 lakh crore package that the government is giving to BSNL would be used to increase its authorized capital in lieu of its adjusted gross revenue, AGR dues, provision of the capital expenditure, and the allotment of spectrum. Now, we must understand that AGR refers to the free sharing mechanism. I'm talking about adjusted gross revenue. It means a free sharing mechanism that computes the share in revenues that the telecom service providers are required to pay the government as annual license fee and spectrum usage charges. Now, whatever revenue that is being generated by the telecom service provider, a part of that, a share of that is also given to the government as annual license fee and the spectrum usage charges, because spectrum allocation is the task of the government, right? So therefore, this bailout package would help, in adjusting, in the AGR or adjusted gross revenue dues, in paying the AGR dues, right? Very important. Now, so these are the three objectives of this bailout package. The first is the high-speed data because of the high spectrum or the broad spectrum which is being allocated. The second is reducing the digital divide. The third is increasing the authorized capital and paying the AGR dues. Very, very important. Now, moving to the next fact about the merger of the MTNL, the Mahanagar Telecom Nigam Limited, and the BSNL. Now, in this way, the MTNL's proficiency would they both will work with synergy, and the proficiency of MTNL now can be used by the BSNL. So these are the data that BSNL lost wireless subscribers at an average 0.3% each month during the period, the last year. At the same time, the BSNL's there is a huge difference in the number of BTS, and we are comparing the private sector players with BSNL, and we see that the BTS is the base transceiver stations, and it is an equivalent that sends and receives radio signals from mobile devices. Right. So BTS is an equipment that sends and receives radio signals from mobile devices. Getting my point? So in this sense, it is a very important achievement, right? And what makes the industry so competitive? Is there an untapped opportunity? Well, India's telecom industry is the third largest in the world. You should understand this. We have a huge market, and the tele density in country is around 84.88%, which is quite high. But however, there is a huge divide between the rural and urban areas, something also called as digital divide. While the urban market's still density is 134.7%, the rural market is largely untapped at about 58%. So therefore, it is a very huge market in India. Now moving to the next news article on the screen. Well, recently, a referendum took place in the North African country of Tunisia. Now, whenever you come across Tunisia, the first thing that comes to your mind is Spring Revolution, the Muslim Brotherhood, the revolution to uproot the autocratic regime and to install the democratically elected government having a new constitution. Now, the Spring Revolution, which happened in the year Arab Spring, also called as Arab Spring or the Jasmine Revolution in 2011. Now, post that, again, in the past few days, a referendum took place in the country of Tunisia. And this referendum would actually reduce the country into a presidential form of government. Because after the 2011 Arab Spring or Jasmine Revolution, a new constitution came into being in Tunisia, which actually, split the powers between the president and the prime minister. That means there were powers given to the parliament for in some areas, and then there were some important powers to the president. But now the present president, Kais Said, he want to completely change the system into presidential form, and he would reduce the parliament just to whatever he decides, the parliament would take action. और इस वजह से the system would be completely presidential. Even he it was his decision. On his decision, the judges of the court would be appointed. Right. So let us understand this article and why it is a threat to the democracy. Because President Kais Said in this new constitution has declared that he would be president for lifetime. Right. So in this way, he has displayed his autocratic tendencies. Also, the referendum was happened to actually ratify this new constitution, and there was 96% of people voting in favor of the new constitution, which would give President Said immense power or overwhelming powers. But the point is that only 30% of the people in the country turned out to vote, and out of those 30%, 94% favored the new constitution. So the Tunisian voters have approved a new constitution that would turn the country back into a presidential system, institutionalizing the one-man reign. So it will be a one-man rule, that is President Kais Said. And President Said also suspended the elected parliament and awarded more powers to himself last year. Now, the new constitution, students, would erase whatever democratic gains Tunisia has made since 2011 Arab Spring, also called as Jasmine Revolution, and push the country back into an authoritarian slide. Now, the Arab Spring protests began in Tunisia in 2010. You all would be aware of it, and leading to the fall of the regime of Zine El Abidine Ben Ali, who had been in power since 1987. And quickly, these protests, to uproot the autocratic leader, spread across the Arabian countries or Arabic countries such as Egypt, Libya, Bahrain, Yemen, and Syria. Now, there are many protesters who brought down the 30-year-long dictatorship of Hosni Mubarak in Egypt, and the revolution did not last long in that country. In 2013, the military seized power, toppling the elected government of President Mohamed Morsi, a Muslim Brotherhood leader. Even in Libya, the protests against Gaddafi slipped into a civil war. The same happened in Libya also, and which saw a military intervention by NATO. Although NATO intervention toppled the Gaddafi regime, and you all will be knowing that the Libyan leader Mohammed Gaddafi, was also executed by America, assassinated, later assassinated. But the country country fell into chaos and anarchy, which continue to haunt it even today. Right? So the author is giving various examples that how the revolutions took place in the Arabic nations. Now, Tunisia was the only country that saw a peaceful transition to democracy. Otherwise, there were protests in all the other Arabic nations. And with the new constitution, it is witnessing another transition. Well, students, the 2014 constitution put in place a mixed parliamentary and presidential system. I'm talking about the constitution which came into being after the 2011 Arab Spring or the Jasmine Revolution. In Tunisia, it was a new constitution formed in 2014, and it was a mix of semi-presidential system, a mix of parliamentary and presidential system. Both the president and the parliament were directly elected by the voters. Now, in the democratic elections, the Islamist Ennahda party, which has ideological links with the pan-Islamist Muslim Brotherhood movement, this party emerged as a main political force in the country, right? And this upsets the secular sections. Now, the polity remained fractious. The country had 9 governments between 2011 till 2021. तो 2011 से 2021 तक 9 सरकारें 9 गवर्नमेंट्स बदल चुकी है, right? अब अगर if I talk about its economic state and the political state, it is you know it is actually in a very petty state. And as far as the COVID deaths are concerned, it has highest per capita COVID death rates in the world. And even economy was also nose diving, and there was protest and the unrest taking place in the country, and therefore President Kais Saied moved in, and he sacked the Inhada party backed prime minister Meshish, and suspended the parliament. Correct. And under the 2014 constitution, such crisis should be settled by a constitutional court, but the court had never been formed. It has not been formed yet. So there is no court since the enactment of 2014 constitution. Right. I'm talking about the constitutional court. Now he declared a state of emergency, appointed a prime minister to run the government, dissolved the suspended parliament earlier this year, while simultaneously moving to rewrite the constitution, awarding himself more powers. So we'll understand what is the new constitution and what are the features and how it is a threat to the democratic fabric of the country. Now, the new constitution would protect the values of 2011 revolution. What were the values? Bread, freedom, and dignity. So definitely, the new constitution passed by the referendum also subscribe to these values of bread, freedom, and dignity. But then it gives immense powers to the president at the cost of the parliament. The new charter seeks to take the country back to the presidential system, undercutting the powers of parliament. And it would also make it practically impossible for the lawmakers to remove the president from office. That means once appointed, cannot be removed by the legislators, by the lawmakers. That means he is president for life, or his term would be fixed. Now, President Said has also taken over the country's election body. I mean, you can see how manipulated, how he has rigged the elections, because even the country's election body, the Supreme Independent Election Commission, is also being taken over by President Kais Saied. And previously, the 9 members of ISIE, which is Independent Election Commission, were appointed by Parliament. Now, the president would directly appoint all the members to the election commission. So, I mean, the body which conducts free and fair elections is also not, is not also not independent because of this new provision. That means even the president would be appointing the members to the election commission. And the new constitution lacks essential checks on the presidential power. That means he's being given free ride and would return Tunisia into an autocratic constitutional order. Now, so therefore, it is very, very dangerous. Even the judges would now be appointed by the president. So therefore, the judicial independence is also threatened. Now, if in Egypt the ruling Muslim Brotherhood's sudden move to Islamize the country created a momentum for the counter revolution, which the military ceased to grab power. In Tunisia, the parliamentary system's failure to address the country's enormous problems set the stage for presidential power grab. So we must understand that why it happened, because the parliament or the democratically elected prime minister was not actually able to resolve the economic crisis in Tunisia, and therefore President Kais Saied took all the powers in his hand, and but then it would result to autocracy and the death of democracy. Right. So this is an important article about Tunisia and some important takeaways like the Arab Spring, the Jasmine Revolution, and so on and so forth. The president Kais Saied, they may put a blank in the passage, and you have to make out, you have to answer it. So it is President Kais Saied, and he dismissed whom? The Prime Minister Hisham Mashish. So moving to the next news article. I hope this one is clear. Let's move to the editorial section. Well, students, 29th July today is also celebrated as International Tiger Day or Global Tiger Day. Now, this day calls us to to augment our preservation, tiger conservation and preservation efforts. Now, the good news is that India is now reporting increased tiger numbers, as per the survey. And a recent International Union or IUCN assessment suggests that the tiger numbers have increased by 40% since 2005. So this is a positive indicator. But the problem is that what numbers do not reveal about tiger conservation, because there are many issues which are being confronted by this wild cat, and which are to be addressed sooner than later. Now, the problem in India is that the tiger reserves, we have around 51 tiger reserves, but then they are small, and there they have small and isolated population of tigers, right? There are around 3 to 4,000 tigers in India, but they are spread into small pockets on the tiger reserves, right? So for example, Ranthambore has around 80 tigers. So because of the small population and isolated population, there is a high probability of extinction, and it also results into the genetic variants, which might increase in frequency, right? Because there is less population, and they are actually meeting up with each other. I mean, mingling with each other and meeting. So there is a possibility of detrimental genetic variants which might increase in frequency, and this process is called as genetic drift. Also, tigers in small population are more likely to be related, leading to inbreeding. Right? And this exposes the many slightly disadvantaged genetic variants that are present in all genomes. Now, when expressed together, these detrimental genetic variants cause inbreeding depression and reduced survival and reproduction of inbred individuals. Getting my point? So when the population is less, the genetic diversity is less, and this results into inbreeding and genetic drift. Also results into inbreeding depressions, reduced survival, and the reproduction of inbred individuals. Now, most tiger populations in India are smaller than 100, and on their own, most tiger populations do not have a high chance of survival. So therefore, the government is also, but then it is saying, but then it must be followed in letter and spirit. They are saying to build, the tiger corridors so that they can crisscross from the tiger reserve and could go to the another, area or other forest where they can have more, mingling up with the other fellow species, right? So, therefore, tigers can be genetically sampled using their excreta, hair, and other biological samples. So, in this sense, we can read the genetic variants in the tiger DNA quite easily. Now, on the flip side, sets of tiger reserves that share less genetic variation must have barriers or landscapes that impede movement and connectivity. So therefore, we must actually open up, make the tiger corridors. In fact, the highways, crossing through the tiger reserves or near tiger reserves must be designed in such a way that underpass is there, for the wild species to travel, right, to walk freely. So having an underpass to allow wildlife movement and connectivity, in summary, as long as we manage the landscapes outside tiger reserves to allow tiger movement. So the crucial point in this article is tiger movement. They must be allowed movement, outside their uh, parochial area, isolated area, and protect the prey and the tigers inside tiger reserves, that the tigers are sure to survive in landscapes such as central India. As you can see, guys, there are many. As I said, there are around 51 tiger reserves. One such tiger reserve called a Simlipal Tiger Reserve in Odisha can be studied as a case here. Now, in Odisha's Simlipal Tiger Reserve, you have black tigers. Black tigers, and it is because of the genetic effects of isolation, right? So this happens, because of the isolation. A single, mutation in a specific gene causes these tigers to look this way, right? So because of the genetic drift, as we discussed, in the beginning, the tigers in Sindipal form a small and isolated population. On the other side, when you compare it with Rajasthan Ranthambore Tiger National Park, the genome sequences from the wild tigers reveal that the individuals in Ranthambore show inbreeding, while we do not see adverse effects of inbreeding as yet, but individuals are related and carry potentially disadvantageous genetic variants, which might affect the survival and reproduction of tigers. Because they are very less in number, around 80, as I just said in the beginning, they are related and carry potential disadvantageous genetic variants, and this might affect the survival and reproduction of tigers in Ranthambore in future. In short, we are seeing the genetic effects of isolation and small population size. Getting. So in this sense, we are seeing the genetic effects of isolation and small population size in wild tigers and some locations. Well, what are the strategies for the future? Well, we must not lose sight of other factors that are critical to their continued survival, such as connectivity. Right. So the connectivity is the key. The movement, tiger movement is the key. We must come up with the novel genome sequencing technology, which provides an opportunity to understand tigers much better in the context of their conservation. Right. So this is an important article, and it ponders on the genetic drift, the inbreeding, and how connectivity and the movement, the tiger movement, can actually resolve this problem. So very important article on Global Tiger Day, also called as International Tiger Day, on 29th July. So if I talk about the conservation status of tiger, in the Indian Wildlife Protection Act 1972, it comes under Schedule 1, right? So there are different schedules which categorizes the wild species based on its extinction. Uh, so in the Wildlife Protection Act 1972, it comes under Schedule 1. In the IUCN Red List, it is declared as endangered. In CITES, which is Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Fauna and Flora, it comes to Appendix 1, right? So in this sense, a very important, and it has been asked previously in various examinations, including UPSC. So I repeat again, in WPA 1972, which is Wildlife Protection Act 1972, it comes under Schedule 1. In IUCN Red List, it comes in endangered, and in CITES, which is a Convention on the International Trade in Endangered Species, Wild Fauna Flora, it comes Appendix 1. Yeah. Now, if I talk about the tiger conservation projects in India, the Project Tiger started in India in the year 1973, which is a centrally sponsored scheme of the Ministry of Forest, and it provides a safe haven for tigers in the country's national parks. For example, Ranthambore is a part of the Project Tiger, Corbett National Park, so on and so forth. Simlipal, Manas in Assam. The National Tiger Conservation Authority was being formed as a statutory body under the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change in the year 2005, following the recommendation of the Tiger Task Force. Very important NTCA, regulatory body, a statutory body formed by the Act of the Parliament. Now, if I talk about the conservation status of tiger in India, we must understand that India is a home to over 70% of tiger population globally. Right? So that means around 70% tigers of the world live in India. And we have around 51 tiger reserves. The last tiger census, happened in the year 2018, and it showed a positive increase in the tiger population. The target India to achieve, and India has achieved the target of doubling the tiger population 4 years ahead of the schedule, that is 2022, of the St. Petersburg Declaration on Tiger Conservation. Now, the St. Petersburg Declaration on Tiger Conservation set a target of doubling the tiger population, right? And it asked the countries to achieve this target before 2022 or up to 2022. Now, India achieved this target of doubling the tiger population 4 years ahead of the schedule, right? Because the last census was in the year 2018, and in 2018, the tiger population got doubled, right? So in this way, we achieved this target. So this is a very important development. At the same time, we must also understand about the conservation assured tiger standards, or CATS, CATS. Now, CATS has been agreed upon as an accreditation tool by the global coalition of tiger range countries, right? So it is kind of accreditation tool. It gives the accreditation, to the tiger reserves, and has been developed by tiger and protected area experts, right? So tiger range countries. Now, at present, there are 13 tiger range countries like India, Bangladesh, Bhutan, Cambodia, China, Indonesia, Laos, PDR, Malaysia, Myanmar, Nepal, Russia, Thailand, and Vietnam. So there are 13 tiger range countries, right? And CATS is a set of criteria which allows tiger sites to check if their management will lead to successful tiger conservation, right? So in this sense, it is a kind of accreditation tool which checks, their conservation. Now, the CATS was officially launched in the year 2013. Let us talk about Global Tiger Forum. Now, Global Tiger Forum, also called as GTF, is an international NGO working on tiger conservation, and World Wildlife Fund India. So, World Wildlife Fund India WFI and the GTF are the two implementing partners of NTCA for cats assessment in India. Now, there are 14 tiger reserves which have been accredited by the cats assessment, and they are mentioned below. Manas, Manas in Assam, Kaziranga and Orang Tiger Reserves also in Assam. Satpura, Kahna, and Panna Tiger Reserve in Madhya Pradesh, Pench Tiger Reserve in Maharashtra, Valmiki Tiger Reserve in Bihar, Dudhwa Tiger Reserve in Uttar Pradesh, Sundarbans Tiger Reserve in West Bengal, Parambikulam Tiger Reserve in Kerala, Bandipur is in Karnataka, Madhumalai and Anamalai Tiger Reserves in Tamil Nadu. Right? Very, very important. I strongly expect a question on this. Now, this is a list of all the tiger reserves in India. You can see here in Rajasthan, Ranthambore is there. Sariska, you have tigers reserve. Then Mukundra Hills, which is again a national park. So out of these three, only Ranthambore and Mukundra Hills National Park are the national parks. Sariska is for wildlife sanctuary, although it is a tiger reserve. Now here you can see at the south in Karnataka, you can see Nagarhole, then Bandipur, Satyamangalam, uh, Zandeli Ashan, Madhumalai in Tamil Nadu, so on and so forth. In the east also Manas, Pakka, Namdafa, Baksa, Sanjay Dubri, so on and so forth. Right? So very important. Kurang is also very important. Now moving to the next news article on the screen. Now it talks about the PMLA or Prevention of Money Laundering Act. Now before I explain this article, let me explain you what is money laundering. Now money laundering is the illegal process of making large amount of money, right? And the money normally is generated through criminal activity. It may appear to come from a legitimate sources. So the money which is generated through criminal activity, and then this money is being channelized or infused into the legal channel, so as to generate more. So it is therefore called as money laundering. So it is a process of criminal proceeds to disguise their illegal origin. Right. So whatever proceeds or the revenue that you generate from the crime, uh, money is called as money laundering, and then you do the process to disguise its illegal origin. It enables the criminal to enjoy these profits without jeopardizing their source. For example, the illegal arms sale, smuggling, and the activities of organized crime, including, for example, drug trafficking and prostitution rings, can generate huge amount of proceeds, right? And then this money is being used for all the illegal activities. Now, having understood the PMLA or the money laundering, which is the generation of the illegal money, the Supreme Court recently came with a verdict on PMLA, which fails to protect personal liberty from draconian provisions. Now, Supreme Court's verdict upholding all the controversial provisions of PMLA falls short of judicial standards of reviewing legislative action. Now, India's commitment to the international community on strengthening the domestic legal framework for combating money laundering is so inviolable that possible violation of fundamental rights can be downgraded. Now, the thing is that there are some powers given to the ED. I mean, the ED and the government are misusing, the powers and in the vendetta politics, and there are alleged subversion of the PMLA by the government and the ED. So, so these days ED could just walk into anybody's house, So in all this, the fundamental purpose of PMLA is killed actually. And what is it? To investigate conversion of illegal money into legitimate money. So PMLA, the main objective is to convert the illegal money into the legal money, right? So whatever, because see, there are many rackets, terror activities, drug trafficking, prostitution rings, and whatever illegal money that is being generated is being pumped into the mainstream, bank system. So in this way, the illegitimate money is being converted into the legitimate money, right? So this is unethical, and it is in fact being declared as a terrorism. So the government has come up with the PMLA Act to investigate such conversions. Right. The PMLA was enacted in response to India's global commitment, including the Vienna Convention, to combat the menace of money laundering. It was a penal statute because it is an act passed by the parliament to counter the threat of money laundering, specifically stemming from trade in narcotics. Right. So from narcotics also there is huge revenue which is being coming, and this is then being pumped into the mainstream channel. Now, currently the offences in the schedule of the Act are extremely overbroad, and in several cases have absolutely no relation to either narcotics or organized crime. Right. So, in this way, there is no doubt the widespread international concern over the malefic effects of organized crime are fueling international narcotics trade and terrorism. Much of these activities are funded by illicit money generated from crime. Now it rejects, this verdict of Supreme Court on PMLA rejects the plea to treat the enforcement directorate officers who record statements as police officers. So it actually rejects the plea to treat ED officers as police officers, thus protecting their evidentiary admissibility at a time when the ED is selectively targeting regime opponents. The verdict is bound to be remembered for its failure to protect personal liberty from executive excesses. The point is that from now onwards, the ED officers would not be called as the police officers, right? I mean, as far as the PMLA investigations are concerned, and in this way, it protects the evidentiary admissibility, right? So therefore, it is threat to the personal liberty and the executive excesses. It is quite disappointing that the court did not find provision for forcing one summoned by the ED to disclose and submit documents and then sign it under pain of prosecution as violating the constitutional bar on testimonial compulsion. So, nor was it impressed by the argument that the search and seizure provisions lack judicial oversight and are exclusively driven by ED officers. Right, so we have understood the money laundering, and the PMLA Act was passed in the year 2002 along with the PML rules 2005. Right, the principal laws enacted to prevent the money laundering in India, and the specialized authorities dealing with money laundering issues are RBI, SEBI, and IRDA, which also prescribe guidelines on anti-money laundering standards based on PMLA and the rules. Now, PMLA was enacted to fight against the criminal offense of legalizing the income from the illegal source, right? Because people convert the money from the illegal source to a legal source, right? That means they convert the illegitimate money or illegal money into legal money. So the PMLA 2002 enables the government or the public authority to confiscate the property earned from illegally gained proceeds, right? So government can confiscate the property earned through the illegally gained proceeds. Any person who directly or indirectly attempts to indulge or assist the person who is actually involved in any process is a party to the activity connected with the proceeds of the crime. Right. Now, guys, must understand that India is a signatory to the United Nations Resolution of 1998, which calls upon the member states to take strict actions against money laundering. Right. So India is a signatory to United Nations Resolution 1998, and it calls upon the member states to take strict actions against money laundering. So this is also an important takeaway. Now, if I talk about the legal framework in India to prevent money laundering, the first is definitely the PMLA Act of 2002 to fight against the crime of money laundering and to punish the people by benefiting out from this crime. And under this act, the Financial Intelligence Unit will scrutinize all the records to find out and spot any suspicious transactions, if any, and then the investigation goes on by the ED. You also have the POTA, Prevention of Terrorism Act 2002, which was passed in the year 2002, and it allows the forfeiture by the central government of the proceeds of terrorism. Right? That is the money for terrorist financing. Now, if I talk about the Financial Intelligence Unit or FIU, it is not a regulatory authority, but its main duty is to gather all the financial intelligence in close operation with regulatory authorities, which also includes RBI, SEBI, and IRDA. Right? So, in this sense, it gathers all the financial information, right, in close operation with the regulatory authorities, along with looking after all the suspicious transactions and then to report it, right? It is responsible for the coordination and strengthening of any national and international intelligence. The SEBI is also there. RBI is doing taking the measures to actually to resolve the issue of money laundering. Now, if I talk about the global initiatives to prevent money laundering, we must not forget the Vienna Convention, which came into being in 1988 and is one of the first initiatives for prevention of money laundering. So this is something which has to kept in mind. Vienna Convention, very, very important. Strongly expect a question on this. So 1988 Vienna Convention, the first initiative for the prevention of money laundering. And the main aim of this convention was to lay down the efforts to combat any money laundering. Right? Now, the second is the Council of Europe Convention. Council of Europe Convention establishes a common policy on the problem of money laundering. It gives a common definition of money laundering and measures on how to deal with. them. The main aim of this convention is to facilitate international cooperation as regards investigative assistance. Now, we also have Basel Committee's statement of principles. Now, we know that Basel is a place in Switzerland and it comes with the statement of principles, right? So, Basel Committee on Banking Regulation and Supervisory Practices, 1988, it intends to encourage the banking sector to adopt a common position to ensure that banks are not used to hide or launder funds acquired through criminal activities or any illegal activities. Now, this came into being because there is huge, money being kept in the Swiss banks. So therefore, we also have FATF, right, which is Financial Action Task Force, a Paris-based intergovernmental organization set up in the year 1989 at G7 summit, and it sets some high standards and promote effective implementation of any legal, regulatory, and operational measures to curb the evil practice of money laundering and terrorist financing. We also have United Nations Global Program Against Money Laundering, established in the year 1997, with an idea to increase the effectiveness of all the international actions against any kind of money laundering to technical cooperation. Right? So we discussed about the Vienna Convention, the first initiative to prevent the money laundering, 1988. We discussed the Council of Europe Convention, the Basel Committee Statement of Principles, very important. The FATF 1989, headquartered at Paris, again asked in the Clat examination a few years back, the UN Global Program Against Money Laundering. So on ED's power under PMLA, well, the question of enactment of PMLA amendments through the money bill route is to be decided by the larger bench, right? So we know that how they have changed the vocabulary, that the ED officer would be considered as a police officers, and in this way they would get a free hand to influence the personal liberty of the individual in the name of investigation against PMLA. All right, so these are some details. PMLA amendment was also happened in the year 2019 recently. Before pandemic, PMLA Amendment Act 2019. It treats money laundering as a standalone crime and expands the ambit of proceeds of crime to those properties which may directly or indirectly be derived or obtained as a result of any criminal activity related to the scheduled offense. Right. So in this sense, the PMLA Amendment Act 2019 has expanded the ambit of the proceeds of the crime to also include the properties which are being purchased through such illegitimate money. The most crucial amendments are the depletion of provisions in subsection 1 and 17, seizure and search and seizure and search of persons. Right? Now, these provisions required the prerequisite of an FIR or a charge sheet by other agencies that are authorized to probe the offences listed in PMLA schedule. Right? But now they have deleted section 1 and section 17, which and 18, we talk about the search and seizure and the search of person. So now, even without FIR or charge, one can confiscate the person or the property. Now, the explanation is added to section 45 that clarifies that all PMLA offences will be cognizable and non-bailable. Therefore, the Enforcement Directorate, which will be empowered to arrest an accused without an arrest warrant or a search warrant, subject to certain conditions. Right. So an important article. Let me discuss a bit about ED. ED is a law enforcement agency and economic intelligence agency responsible for enforcing economic laws and fighting economic crime in India. So ED is majorly deals with fighting the economic crime in India. One of the main functions of ED is to investigate offences of money laundering under the provisions of PMLA 2002 and can take actions like the confiscation of property, if the same is determined to be proceeds of crime derived from the scheduled offense under PMLA. And ED enforces students the following laws: the FEMA and the FEMA is Foreign Exchange Management Act 1999 and PMLA 2002. Right, and these things we have already discussed. So this is how the illegitimate money is being converted into the legitimate money, collection of dirty money. Here you can see, then placing it into the financial system, into the banks. Then it's being transferred to other banks. Also called layering, the transfer funds between various offshore onshore banks, and then it is being integrated into the mainstream system, and the person can purchase the luxury assets, financial investments, commercial, industrial investments, so on and so forth. Right. Now there is now moving to the next news article in the editorial page. I hope the previous one is clear. Now this article talks about the environmental performance index. Right. It's being published by one of the international agency, and India has also been ranked and possibly last in the out of 120 180 countries. So students, a very sad news, and although it is something which is an old one, but India was ranked last out of 180 countries. India scored 180 points with low scores across a range of indicators. Right, environmental performance index. Now it was being protested and objected by the government. That the report does not show the actual picture. Now we must understand that the environmental performance index report is being prepared by researchers at the Yale and Columbia universities in the United States. Well, if the question comes that which country has topped the list of environmental performance index, so it is Denmark, followed by United Kingdom and Finland, right? So first is Denmark, second UK, third Finland, and last is India, which is ranked at 180. Now, what is EPI? Well, EPI is an international ranking system that measures environmental health and sustainability of countries, right? So it measures the environmental health and sustainability of countries, and it is a biennial index. It started in the year 2002. That means it's been published twice a year. Sorry, 1 in 2 years. It is being published once in 2 years, right? And it started in the year 2002 by the World Economic Forum in collaboration with Yale University and the Columbia University, right? So it measures environmental health and sustainability of countries, right? So these are the key indicators, as you can see. And even the neighboring countries of India, like Bangladesh, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Sri Lanka, China, Nepal, they all have done well than India, right? So this is again a shocking reality. Now, there's some key indicators on which they judge is biodiversity, protected areas, species protection index, air quality, climate policy, ecosystem vitality, greenhouse gas emissions, biodiversity habitat index, PM 2.5 or particulate matter 2.5, and waste management. Well, the framework, the 2022 EP leverages the 40 performance indicators grouped into 11 issue categories, right? So these issue categories are in turn aggregated into three policy objectives like environmental health, ecosystem vitality, and the climate change. And they scale it from 0 to 100, from worst to best performance. So that's all from my side. I hope you enjoyed the session. Stay tuned for more such session. Press the bell icon for the regular updates. Do like, comment, and share. Wish you all the best. See you in the next class. Good day. God bless you.